Hi, friends. Welcome to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And when I say unexpected, who knows where this one will go? I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm doing my best to stay alive, right? Because I have young children. And so I'm trying to get another 20, 30 years out of this body. Because here's the truth. I want to see them with their kids because I want to look at their face when they love something as much as I love them. And then I want to go, hey, you and me, right? You and me. So that's what I'm doing. So I try to find some fitness, and podcasts are a way to go. I had a buddy tell me, hey, have you ever heard the Iron Sights podcast? I'm like, no. And he goes, it's a local guy. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, you should check it out. And I did. And Scott Howell's on the podcast with me today. And I'm telling you right now, as soon as you get done listening to this podcast, if you haven't heard Scott's, you need to go listen to his. Because he's probably better at this than I am. So I'm just telling you.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Gary. Thanks for having me on today. I'm honored to be here, man. It's always a good time chatting with you, and to do it in this format. This is special. And by the way, I commend you for those goals. Those are some legit goals, man. And one way or another, in my experience, people come to that realization that you just said at some point in life. It becomes bigger than just going to the gym or staying fit. It's the bigger things, and that's ultimately what keeps people going at it. And the fact that you're doing that is outstanding. I wish I heard that more. It usually comes up at some point, but I wish I heard it earlier, more often, I guess is what I would say.
Well, the reason I fell in love with your podcast, right? Because I'll tell you the truth. A lot of fitness podcasts I can't take. I just can't take because
it makes two of us
because they don't live in the real world. They have no pragmatism whatsoever. And I told you this, Scott and I had breakfast, and when we had breakfast, I said, okay, don't make me self-conscious about what I'm going to order for breakfast right now. and I ordered some cream covered everything. It was awesome. It was
delicious, was it? You enjoyed it? Yeah, it was good. So
every bite, I enjoyed it. But I told you what, when I found yours, the first podcast I listened to, you didn't really even talk fitness. You didn't. And I was like, okay, this guy, and I told you this to your face, this guy is so damn interesting. This guy has got a take on things. And then when I started delving into the fitness thing, I'm telling you, I'm a little bit into this last week's episode, but the week or two ago, we had everybody down. That's what I was telling you. And you were talking directly to me. I mean, that entire podcast, it was like you were going, hey, Gary, now here's the reality. Here's how it's going to work. I need to know how you got there. Tell me a little of your story.
So the fitness stuff starts with me way back, as a kid. I was really very fortunate growing up, great parents, very supportive, and they wanted to keep me and my brother, who's younger than me by 5 years, busy, because if they hadn't, we'd probably gotten into a lot more trouble than we did. And so, playing sports, whatever it was, and there was a lot of things growing up. I mean, we swam, we played soccer, we played baseball. My folks were always about getting outside on vacations and things like that. So we hiked and got out into nature quite a bit. And so it's just kind of a natural part of my growing up. And then, sports starts to take off. You have to choose things. So for me, I chose football and wrestling and track and field and lifting weights. My dad had a history with that and working in some gyms. My dad, I don't know if I shared this with you actually when we chatted the last time. My dad actually worked for Jack LaLanne back in the day.
You are kidding me.
No, I have a picture of him here in the studio with Jack LaLanne in one of Jack LaLanne's gyms on the Miracle Mile.
Now we need to explain real quick. We need to take a side note. Jack LaLanne was the first fitness superstar. He had a daily fitness show. My mother would watch it, and he didn't have weights. Now he was jacked, and you could tell he lifted weights, but he didn't do that. He was doing fitness for housewives. He did a lot of stuff with chairs.
Yep.
I'm not even lying. And he was just very gregarious, and he was, and he was the first fitness guy. Matter of fact, he was the only fitness guy up until I'd be willing to say Schwarzenegger.
I think you're right. My dad had come in at the Schwarzenegger time. He'd been in the service. He came out, and that was just starting to kind of pick up. And he was working at Jack LaLanne, and he was working out at the gyms where guys like Franco Columbu and Arnold Schwarzenegger were. So he got Yeah, so he got into that he got into that while he was studying, going to school for his master's degree. But yeah, so we always, we were always just kind of around, staying fit, staying healthy the best we could. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything that was like forced down our throats. It was stuff that we wanted to do, where there was community in it. We had relationships that were built there. It's the same kids you're playing soccer with or whatever, the same kids you're doing, sleepovers with and going on camping trips and whatever. And so anyhow, flash forward, as competitive athletics sort of from like the institution kind of, ended for me, I kind of found myself lost a little bit. And, I've been working out and doing things with a purpose, with a purpose and a passion to, I guess, express whatever I was getting from inside the gym onto the field, the court, the mat, whatever it is that I was doing. And I kind of lost touch with that. I was like, well, what am I doing now? And I have all this extra time. I was a college student and, so I was just going to school, was working a little bit, and I had lots of time to spend in the gym. So I was doing that where I was living in San Luis Obispo, California, and going to school. And I got bit by the bodybuilding thing. So we're going back into the 90s now and to the mid to late 90s. And bodybuilding was really taking a different turn. It was really becoming popularized in a different way. And there wasn't a lot, unless you were in like college athletics or professional athletics, when we think about like the strength and conditioning world, really there wasn't a lot to go do. You could do triathlon, which I did later in life, and things like that. That was popular. Running was certainly popular. There wasn't a lot of things you could go and compete in. And I was like, well, I like being competitive, so let me give this a shot. So I started training like a bodybuilder, more like a bodybuilder, let's just say, than an athlete. And not to take away from bodybuilders and the things that they do, but something that had like offense and defense in it, maybe. and you don't get that there. So I started training in this gym, and I ran into some walls. I was like, I was trying to progress, and of course, at that time, as fast as I could, I wanted it all, and I wanted it now. And I read voraciously everything I could get my hands on. This is pre-internet.
Yeah.
I mean, internet was just coming around. And so the next thing I did was I recognized there were some things I was missing on the nutrition side. So I went to one of the owners of the gym, who at the time was a competitive bodybuilder. And I said, I need some nutrition coaching. And she said, well, that's not free. And I said, well, I'm a starving student. How do I do this? She's like, I'll tell you what, because I knew her a little bit, and she saw me working out in the gym, and I had a little bit of a reputation, I guess, for working hard and being consistent and whatnot. She's like, I've seen you here. I know what you're doing, and I need a training partner. And so if you do that with me, because she was getting ready for an upcoming show, and you're here, as a training partner for me, I will help you along the way. And I said, show me where to sign. And that ultimately turned into, so it was 4 a.m., 5 days a week, showing up to the gym while working another job and also going to school. And it didn't take long. She's like, you're pretty good at this, and you really understand how things are working. Have you ever considered becoming a personal trainer? And that had never crossed my mind, but I took her up on that opportunity. She helped me with some education, and outside of the gym, got me involved in a couple of things, helped me get involved in a couple of things. The next thing I knew, I was training folks and, working for a company, and that evolved into a longer career. I could get into that if you want, but I've been doing it for 27 years.
Absolutely, we're going to go because the owner of Red Dot Fitness. I'm intrigued to find out what Red Dot. Why we call it Red Dot Fitness, and then we're going to go down the podcast trail because
Sure.
I'm a big fan of his podcast, and he knows that, and he also knows I'm kind of going to embarrass him. That's how big of a fan I am.
I'm sure you got some stories. We know some of the same people, so I can't wait for that. Yeah.
I'm talking about how big a fan I am of your podcast. I told you that last time, but I do want to ask this. I had a buddy of mine. His this is years ago, and his wife was saying, "I don't want to work out because I don't want to get big," and he kind of got miffed. He wasn't angry, but he was like, "Do you know how hard it is to get big? I've been working for 20 years. I've been working out for 20 years. You can't get big. Either your body gets big or you can get fit, and you're not going to get big." And as you can tell, that stuck with me all these years. And I've never sat back and asked somebody, was he right? Was he true? Because obviously it was true for his story because he was saying, I've been working out like crazy. I can't get big. I mean, he was well built. He goes,
Mhm.
but you can't get big. Your body's not
Right.
ready to get big. It's not going to get big.
So over again, I've had a long kind of story career here. I worked for a large company, a major Fortune 500 company, one of the largest fitness companies in the world for 10 years. I had a really good run there. I got to do a lot of things for them, um, but in my 27 years, somehow that myth still persists a little bit. I don't exactly know where it came from. I think it's just an emotional response to what people see, and also a defense mechanism to maybe not wanting to make a commitment. I think there's two sides of every coin there, but your friend's right. Like there's some fundamental components that it takes to get quote unquote big, whatever that means for somebody. But these folks you see standing on stage in bikinis or bathing suits, board shorts, whatever it looks like now, because it's evolved. That is the competitive bodybuilding scene. It takes a tremendous amount of dedication, commitment, work, and a very consistent and well planned execution of the fundamentals on a daily basis. And my experience has just been this, not to offend anybody out there. There's a very small percentage of the population that can actually do that and get big. Some people, I think you may have some like a genetic predisposition to having, certain body types and things like that. But people should not worry about that. If that's what's keeping you out of the resistance training game, let's just put it that way. We need to squash that, because that just isn't the case.
Corey, after all these years, you've finally been vindicated, my friend.
I stand with Corey.
Yeah, Corey. Corey lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, and you've finally been vindicated. Well, it's fascinating because when it all comes to fitness, it's something we all want to do, but it's like anything. And as you said, I wanted it immediately. But even your immediately, you understood that it was a process. And one of the things I loved about the podcast I told you a couple of podcasts ago, where you're so pragmatic, and I felt this way all along. If you're not doing something you enjoy, or you can find some fun in, it's going to be real hard to do.
Yep.
And it's like, can you working out is something any of us can do. Now, I don't care how much you work out. The majority of us don't have a 100-mile-an-hour fastball in us. The majority of us can't throw a football on a laser for a 40-yard down and out, right? I mean, you're either genetically blessed with that. The majority of people who run will never come close to a 4-minute mile, much less sub 4-minute mile. That is a special breed of human. But we can all find something we can do to move. And that's what I loved about your approach on that. And I know I'm getting sidetracked. I want to get back down to Red Dot Fitness, but you know me, I'm going to go all over the map because
it's all good
where it's at. I just enjoy it so much.
So it's interesting the way you kind of defined a few things there. And I think where people, you mentioned that everybody can do it. It's not that everybody can do it. Everybody should do it. And there's a lot to that, obviously, from a health and wellness perspective. Again, we could go down a lot of rabbit holes here, and I could try to give you some high level stuff in terms of like philosophy and methodology.
Go down any rabbit hole you want. After an hour, I'll shut you up. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's just interesting how people connect to the word fitness or the term fitness and what that means for people. And I think for a long time, for a lot of people, what that means is like we define fitness as my deadlift, my bench press, my marathon time, my 5K time, how flexible I am, how mobile I'm not, something like that, how fast I can throw the football or the baseball or whatever else. And that's an expression of however you're training and whatever your ability, but more specifically, like your skill sets are. And so I think when I look at how people connect to fitness, I look at it sort of in a triangle of awareness, and there has to be a deep rooted why within that triangle of awareness that connects somebody to what it is that they're doing to get them, or so that when they're going to the gym, whatever they're doing, whether they're hiking, whatever, there's a bigger connection than I'm just here to fitness today. And So when I look at it, I think anybody, I don't care who you are, you should be doing some type of physical fitness on a regular, consistent basis for long-term health. So that triangle looks like this. I don't care who you are, you can put yourself on one of these sides, and that would be your goals are either health and longevity, and that includes a lot of things, right? And I would imagine for you, Gary, it's probably rooted mostly in health and longevity. You just said it. Your deeper rooted reason is I want to see my grandkids, you know, accomplish these things and do these things, and the smiles on their faces. That's a health and longevity goal. And there's a lot of things that wrap into that. One of the other sides might be aesthetics. So physique, I want to look better naked, right? For lack of a better term of putting that, right?
I think I want to look better with my clothes on.
Yeah,
we all want to look good on the Instagram. I mean, and if
right,
you posted naked pictures on the Instagram, life has gone terribly wrong for you.
yeah, I haven't ever met a person ever in my life in the career that I've had that didn't want to change something about themselves physically, right? And I think that's a very good goal to have. Like, again, what is it anchored to? That those questions need to be answered. But I've never met anybody that didn't want some type of physique change of some kind. Like, I wish I had bigger arms. I wish my back was more quote unquote toned, something like that. Legs, thighs, whatever, right? I want to lose weight. And that's usually connected to a deeper reason. And then the other one is performance. That's the other side of the triangle. So what am I trying to do? You mentioned a couple things, like I want to throw the football further or faster, the baseball faster. I want to run further. I want to run faster. Those are performance goals. So they're all intertwined and they all overlap. But you have to have a connection to what it is that you're training, or why it is that you're training, to ever come up with what it is I should be doing, how often I should be doing it, what exercises should I do. I mean, all of those, it's like a flow chart of kind of things, and then you can kind of work into a matrix of things without overcomplicating it. You first have to have a deeper rooted why. And I think that probably resonates with most people. I mean, you already disclosed your own, and it's okay if it changes. It might start one way, because I can almost promise you it will. You'll go on this health and longevity, focus, and then you'll recognize, man, I'm getting more fit. I'm feeling more I have more drive to do things. And maybe I want to go out and try something new, a new activity. Maybe it's getting to the mountains in the winter to do some skiing or some snowboarding or something like that. And then that turns more into a performance goal. And so it shifts. It's never linear. So I guess I say all that to say that, when folks embark on this quote unquote fitness journey, it should be more of a lifestyle that you're adopting here, and what works for you, and why is it important for you, and what works for you. And let's figure out a way to make that work, because there is no one size fits all. It just doesn't exist.
Well, it's what I told you. The thing I loved about your approach. I love your approach on that is because some of the other fitness podcasts I've listened to made me think that I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're doing it wrong. If you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong. And this is the way you're going to do it. And this is the way we do it. And look at us. And we spend 9 hours in the gym each day, and life is great. And when I hear you spend 9 hours in the gym each day, I'm thinking, wow, things have gone horribly wrong for you, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where you base everything. And I love the pragmatic approach to it, that, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Because for me, it's like the longevity, but the other side, and this may be more important than the longevity. I want to not move like I'm old, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a 13 and a 15-year-old. And I don't want to, we literally last night set out and played badminton in the front yard, right? I won't be able to do that. I won't be able to have that thing. And I think most of us, we do get locked into the pictures. We get locked into Instagram. We get locked into Facebook, and and I'm as bad about it as anybody else. That, oh boy, look, I look like hell right there. But I try to remind myself, hey, you know what you did today? You went for a 7-mile run. That's what you did today. Now the picture says that, but the empirical evidence says this is how well your body's working. And because you do it all the time, because you do move forward, and that was what was. Like I said, I told you I was going to love on you on that podcast, because that's the way you're pragmatic. And for somebody to look like you, because you are a beast of a man, You are just, but for you to sit back and go, hey, let's figure out what works for you instead of coming in with that. And again, that whole Jack LaLanne thing. I loved how Jack LaLanne never told anybody to pick up anything heavy. Now you can tell he did, but he figured out how to talk to people where they live. And I think that your approach, and it seems like the new approach to fitness is there.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you said about listening to other fitness podcasts and just not being able to do it. It's the same for me. It's tough because when you talk about the pictures and the social media, it's a huge driver of people making decisions on how they're going to approach their health or their fitness or their life or their finances or all of these things. And there's so many people out there that are just very talented at sending a message in whichever way or whichever platform or medium they choose. And sometimes that's with their shirts off. And sometimes that's, with their voice or whatever else. And there's a market for it. Doesn't matter, again, there's many ways out there. There's not a way there's not the way, there's a way. And we just have to figure that out where you just mentioned it, like, where are you at? That's not probably proper grammar, but where are you at now? But more importantly, there's two other very important perspectives to look at. Where have you been? What's your history? And where do you want to go? And when we closely examine that through like an assessment process, would be kind of in a technical term, we go through this and we can understand if you're working with the right coach or the right practitioner or allied healthcare professional, whoever it is that you're working with, they should want to have that conversation with you. I feel very strongly about that. There isn't going to be one answer. There's not a pill. There's not one workout. There is you, and there is where you've been, where you are now, and where you want to go, and how do we make sense of this? And how do we then put some things that are actionable, reasonable, right? Again, 9 hours a day is not reasonable for 99.9 to the millionth, degree percentage of people out there. I recognize that. I was that guy for a while. I lived that, and I recognize as life got on and, I started increased
Scott
liabilities. Yeah. I mean, I got kids, I got, relationships, I have businesses, I have life to live. There's other things I want to do.
You want to spend 5 hours in the gym and that's all you do. Good.
Yeah. So how do you make it efficient? How do you make it effective? And so you mentioned the pragmatism. I've just recognized that you can't tell somebody, even if you tell somebody you provide what you think is the perfect plan, it's never perfect. It's just a plan. And let's see how this works out. There has to be flexibility in that. And there's going to be ups and downs. And I mentioned the word linear. It's never linear. Your weight loss is never linear. Your fitness is never linear. Your successes and failures are never linear. There's peaks and valleys. And, what does that mean for you, and how do we get through those together? And that's really what coaching is. And that's, so being able to talk to people in a way that gets them to come to the answers for themselves rather than them handing the sheet of paper or the pill or whatever it is and saying, this is it. What are we really doing there? I maybe have helped somebody momentarily, but when we talk about the term longevity, how can we continue to do this over time and then prepare you for the challenges that you're going to have? They're inevitably, you're going to have challenges. How do you find your way out of those on your own? And I'm here to help guide or maybe direct you on occasion, but you've got to figure this out. And that comes with practice, right? Again, going back to skills.
Listen, all the P's, the practice, the problems, the plan, the participation. I mean, it is a way of approaching it and realizing if you miss a workout, life's not over. If you have an injury, when you and I had breakfast, remember I had hurt my hip. So I had not run for like 2 weeks. I had to end up taking 5 weeks off from running, which drove me and my family bonkers. Just absolutely.
Yeah, I think that resonates for people, because when we go back to the everybody can, there are things that will come up like that, and there are workarounds to those things. Just because you have the knee, the ankle, the hip, the back, the neck, the shoulder, just on the Red Dot Fitness side of things. I mean, that's the reality. Those are the people we're working with. Occasionally we'll have the professional athlete come through there, and everybody loves working with that person, right? It's just this anomaly. There's just not very many of those folks out there, but we get to do very specific things where you get into the weeds a little bit on stuff. But that's not what most people need. And again, going back to social media, they're hearing something or they're seeing something and they're, oh, that's the right answer because they've self-diagnosed them with having a particular issue or problem, or maybe there is a professional diagnosis that's happened there. Oh, there's my answer. And then they latch onto that thing and then they hold it really tight to the chest, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So they end up program hopping. They go to the next thing if it's not working, right? Or they marry themselves to that as the answer, like they plant a flag in it, like diet tribes are like a big one. You know, what am I? I identify as carnivore. I identify as keto, vegan, vegetarian, whatever, intermittent fasting, whatever. And that's the answer because it worked for me. Well, okay, that worked for you. Let's examine the reasons why. But just because it worked for you, your buddy over here who's now trying to accomplish something likely shouldn't adopt the same thing that you have. And that's where adopting somebody else's goals and methods, this is what we see on social media, because nobody's coming up with anything new. None of this is proprietary. Like what you're seeing out there, what people are running into, there's nothing new. Go back to Jack LaLanne. The stuff he said then still holds up now. It's very interesting. I actually have a lot of his old materials that my dad held on to. He's a pack rat that way. And I'm reading through them and go, half this stuff is the same stuff we tell people on a daily basis. Like the human body is the human body. How you apply that to the individual and the concept of individuality that's the fun part for me and the fun part for us. And I think that becomes the unfun part for the consumer, because they are looking for what is right for me and they don't always get the right direction. And social media, as powerful as it is and as helpful as it is, can be a rabbit hole that you'll spend an eternity trying to climb out of, jumping around trying to find what works for you. So it's a tough place. It's a tough time to kind of carve through stuff and understand what might be right for me now.
Well, it is. And we're also, listen, this is America. And let's extrapolate this to the world too. But America, it starts here. We want the pill. We want the pill that'll make everything the way we want it. And
100%.
And we want, right now, I didn't get a chance to talk to you last time, but I thought about this after we left, and I'm like, oh, I need to ask him that when we do the podcast. That whole, we're going to get a little controversial here, but it's with Scott and I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm good.
The whole body beautiful thing, right? Where Lizzo, however big you want to be, you should be. And that's your thing. And you saw all the feeds and stuff like that. And intrinsically, we all sit back and go, that's not good, but you can't say anything. And then when they come out with the Ozempic and the Wegovy, and all of a sudden these body beautiful people have lost 100 pounds. And it was all about, no, I was just waiting for an easier way to do it. What were you thinking? Because you're I wasn't. I'm in the media industry, and I was sitting there going, I can't really say you probably shouldn't eat the whole tub of ice cream. That's probably what you shouldn't do. But as far as who you are, okay, you were on a different plane than I was.
So interesting. Yeah, the body positivity movement. I think again, what people try to do is identify in a particular camp somehow. And once you've done that and you're locked into that, it's very tough to kind of walk back from it, whatever that is. And that crosses over so many different, genres or topics. Politics, fitness, health, you name it. There's people want to, again, plant their flag in something. And once you've done that, it's very tough to walk back from that. And so I think there's a big difference between taking care of yourself and self-care. And what I mean by that is self-care being, when we're looking at health as from a holistic perspective, it isn't one thing, it's a combination of things. There's a spiritual health for folks, there's a mental health or psychological health for folks, there's an emotional side to this, and there's obviously a physical side to that, and all of them interplay. And when you start looking at the hey, it's okay to be like this. Okay, what rationale are we're working from? Whether that's, I think if we start to look at things like statistics and, health markers, and where our country is, particularly if we just kept it local here in the United States of America, we have very, very poor health here at every level that I just mentioned. And people have lost kind of their way. And when they lose their way and they find something that sounds good or feels good to them or helps them from, again, I guess I would say they can kind of get into a camp because there's kind of safety in numbers. And here's some of this validating the way I feel, the way I think, and the things that I do, my behaviors. It's very, very easy to get comfortable there. I think the danger in that is again, people have isolated these little components, and they're not looking at the larger picture. And so it's interesting you mentioned like the GLP, stuff with Wegovy and Ozempic and whatnot. I think, and you specifically you mentioned a celebrity there, and that Ozempic, let's just say this, it killed the body positivity movement, because before it was okay, and now there's a drug you can take, a pharmaceutical you can take to get you out of that situation. That is starting to have some pretty negative side effects for a lot of folks. But what it did was it gave somebody the pill or the answer to not maybe be or look or feel the way they were looking or feeling before. And now, what do you say to that? What do you say if you were in this camp and maybe you're very overweight, very unhealthy by all these different biomarkers, and now you're taking this drug, and physically on the outside you look much different. We haven't really looked under the hood to see what's going on under there yet, but now you're in a different camp. Now it's like, well, what do you say about this? What do you say about all the things that you said before? Do they still hold up? And I think that's a challenging place for people to be. It's certainly a challenging place for a like a health practitioner or a coach or somebody that's working with somebody maybe in the mental or emotional side of things, because they're often connected to the way they look, and there's social currency in the way that you look, particularly now, again, with social media. It's always been like that, especially when you look like the celebrity stuff out there. That is an interesting and controversial concept. It's not something I'm afraid of, and it's something that comes up here pretty frequently. But look, we live in America. We live in a different world, and we live in a very, again, the social media side of things exposes things in a much different way that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And, they're going to have to search their conscience and their soul for what they think is healthy and what isn't healthy, and how they take a stand on that.
That's why I wanted to get your take on it. And I'm the one who brought up Lizzo. And the only reason I brought it up is because she's caught so much flack, as you said.
That's what I mean.
Because you're like, well, you were saying all along, okay, yeah, join me. And then the moment that you found a way out, you did the way out. And and my I've got a couple of phrases that my sons and family will probably have put on my tombstone. One of them is, there is no free. There is no free. Whatever, if somebody hands you an ice cream, it's because they paid for it, right? And everything, this GLP-1 movement, it could be amazing for some people. I find it interesting how, like, there's a country group, the Warren Treaty, and he has diabetes, and he's been doing advertisement for the Wegovy and stuff, because it was a medical necessity for him. And he's lost some weight. Nothing dramatic, but he's lost some weight. I'm sitting back going, when I sit back and look at some of these other celebrities who have dropped lots of weight, I'm like, are we overdosing on this? Because somebody who's taking it for a medical reason, it's not doing what it is for you. And then there's like one celebrity who got real thin, who just recently had to step out of the public eye for about 5 weeks.
Yep.
That's what I worry about, is that there is no free. There's a cost for everything you do.
Yeah, the pendulum swings hard and fast, and particularly with this thing. And we're again, I don't mind being controversial, but this is what I think the other side is seeing. And what I mean by that is, yes, there are certain medical conditions that exist that I think this is a potentially positive thing for people. I think you take the life jacket when you are in rough water and you've gone overboard. I don't think that I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you need to be very aware and educated on what you're doing, and again, why you're doing it. But if I get thrown overboard and somebody throws a life jacket to me, what's my goal now? Like, I'm either trying to get back to the boat or I'm trying to get to the shore so that I can get picked up by the boat again and be back in a safe place and continue on my journey. And I think people enter into things like this, like Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever, the Mounjaro, all the things that are out there, and they don't think about the long term. They're looking for the instant gratification, and they want what their friend has, they want what that celebrity has, or whatever else, and that's human nature. But what we're seeing is a downstream effect there that's really impacting people in a negative way, and it does it internally from a health perspective. We're starting to see lots of things happening. People are talking. There's a lot of talk about the muscle wasting that goes on there, and without getting deep into the science and boring people with the physiology discussion or whatnot, like that's not good. You need to maintain your lean muscle mass. That's what's one of the key markers for long-term health is strength and muscle mass. Those with less live a shorter, less vibrant life. And I think that was kind of one of the things you were mentioning about being able to go outside and play badminton. I want to be able to go outside and play badminton whenever I want, for as long as I can. And
play it when you start, by the way.
Right. There's downstream effects to losing muscle mass. There's things that are happening on, interiorly to the GI tract, and it's really challenging people. And I'm not doing this off of the studies they quote, air quotes here, they did. There's a lot of them now that if you want to read them, right, and if you want to get into it and you want to educate yourself, you can. And again, who's producing the study? Who's paying for that study? What take are you going to get? I am very skeptical about what I read, and I'm very what's the word? I read it with a fine-tooth comb. I want to know where it came from. But the other side of it is those folks that I think do need that life jacket, and they're not able to get that life jacket because so many other people are using this thing. And then the other thing that comes down with this is just the financial side of it. Going back to nothing is free. People are making billions and billions and billions of dollars on this. And because of that, it's going to get marketed and sold to those who need it and those who probably don't. And the downstream effects of that, I think, are dangerous. They're dangerous for everyone on both sides. So, and then there's everything in between. People are looking for the magic bullet, and they just have that 10 pounds to lose, and they're not satisfied with, they don't want to remain consistent. They don't want to be committed to whatever it is that they need to do. And so they're going to do that. I think it's a challenge. I think it's a huge challenge. And we have yet to see, what this means long-term for folks. And I'm scared to see it. I really am.
That's why I wanted to bring it up with you, because I wanted to get your take from your side, right? Because this is something you deal with all the time. For me, it's a borderline apocryphal, right? I mean, it's not like and even the people I know who've lost weight, I got a buddy of mine who's recently lost a lot of weight. And I'm like, so you get asked this all the time, and and he goes, oh no, I didn't do it. I stopped eating. He goes, that's why I didn't do Ozempic. He goes, I just stopped, I cut everything out. He goes, I only have wine 2 days a week where I was having it 4 or 5 days a week, And he goes, so I've just done it that way because that. And he goes, I've just really got into working out because my life is stressful and working out helps. And I'm like, but you're going to have to answer that question. He goes, I get it every day. I get it every day. And I said, and that's the other side of it. And so what if you did? Right. It's interesting.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you?
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency calls in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
Yeah, I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
You're starting to find out why I love the Iron Sights podcast because of the way Scott approaches everything. And he has guests on. You know what I didn't expect to learn? I did not expect to learn as much about law enforcement and the psyche that goes behind it. Because we all know who cops are, but we don't know who cops are. We don't know what that life is like. We don't know what a motivated person steps into that line of fire. Where did this come from? Because you approach it honestly, you approach it on the problems and the good side, and you have guests on who sit back and go, this is the cool part. This is not the cool part. These are the people we have problems with, in our own industry. And here's what we're doing to try to get. I mean, where did that approach come from? Where did the fast?
Yes. So you probably just threw people for a loop. We were talking about fitness. Now we're talking about cops, right?
Exactly right. That's what I was saying about the podcast, because you cover so many topics. But one of the things that you are is I over the years, not years, but over 20 or 30 episodes, I've learned more about the psyche of people who serve. Simple as that. And I mean, I'm talking soldiers and everybody. And there is a certain psyche of people who will go, no, I'll go.
So we're probably important to kind of talk about the origin of the podcast and how I got involved with that community at the level that I'm involved with it. So flash forward, I told you I've been in this 27 years. We have we'll call it a personal training or a personalized health and fitness services studio in San Jose, California. And that got started back in 2010. And back in 2020, everybody will remember we had this thing called COVID. And that impacted gym owners and business owners in the United States pretty dramatically, particularly a lot of small businesses. If you lived in California or live in California, then you understand and I'm not going to go at this as playing the victim. I'm just going to tell you what the facts are. So the hardest hit businesses initially were salons and fitness centers. We were ordered to close our doors or shut down, and obviously that's very tough for businesses like that, much like restaurants or other service related businesses, because you require people to come through the door, and that was that was a tough time. The long story short on that is the business, by order of the county, was to be shut down, and it was shut down for an entire year. The doors were basically locked, and we had to. The word that was being used back then was pivot and do different things. And so, like every other fitness center, fitness coach out there, we were forced to move online with some products and some programs and try and get our brand awareness out there. And so we did that. And while still trying to maintain what we had an outdoor space that we were able to use for a while. It was quite the nightmare for a lot of different reasons during that time. And we were just trying to stay alive. I was just trying to feed my family. I was trying to feed my employees' families. And fulfill the commitment that we had as as a partner to our clients' health and fitness. And so we were really challenged during that time. And I was encouraged to start a podcast. And I had some friends that had also been into podcasting for a while. And this is again going back to 2020. I wasn't sure about it, but I knew what I wanted to do was connect with like my industry friends, talk about some of the challenges and figure out what was working out there and how we were going to get through this and talk about health and fitness, right? Because that's what we did. And that was going to be as a means to, promote our online products and programs and try to keep our brand alive during that time. So that was early in 2020. Later in 2020, the summer of that year, the George Floyd events happened, as well as other civil unrest across the country. And when George Floyd happened, I was sitting on it was about the weekend after, I was sitting on my couch watching the news, and there were cities in this country that were burning down, and over the unrest that was happening out there. And it was a scary time. It was an interesting time. Well, the local news was covering the things that were happening in front of our city hall, which is only about a little over a mile down the street, on the same street that our business is on. And when the first dumpster got lit on fire and the first car got lit on fire or whatever, they started handling that pretty decisively, that being law enforcement, and they were pushing them out of that area. And I was watching because they had the overhead helicopters. They were pushing those folks. They were moving down towards our business, and we had already been vandalized, broken into, several times since the shutdown, because there was very little traffic down here, and there was a lot of the homeless crisis and psychiatric crisis and drug crisis was at an all-time high. I'd never seen anything like that in the downtown area. And so we were dealing with all that, and we were losing everything we had, everything. Friends were moving out of the area, clients were moving out of the area. We didn't know what we were going to do. Again, this is very early on. And so I went down to my business to protect it. And I don't know that, I don't think there were a lot of other business owners that did that, but I very vividly remembered what had happened back in 1992 with the LA riots and the Rodney King incident. And I didn't want to be a victim of seeing my business literally be burned to the ground. And that might sound a little over exaggerated or maybe a little emotional, but I was literally watching on TV. It was happening in other areas of the country. So I went down to my business to protect it. And my way of doing that was being basically a deterrent, standing in the front window and or sitting in my front window, kind of watching the TV that was over above the window and kind of just trying to keep an eye on things. And like a lot of people, was glued to it, seeing what was happening kind of everywhere. And I realized at that point, that how underprepared I probably was for a situation like that. And this was a very specific circumstance, but, I'd left my family at home on the couch, which was just a few blocks away. Like, what was I thinking? What were they going to do if I, and I just left them kind of there by themselves, and I'm down here by myself. And a lot of things started to cross my mind. And this might be a little controversial to people, but, I've always, been proud of and held very close to my heart the Constitution of the United States. That's where we live. It protects some of our God-given rights, and it provides us rights that we don't have or that other people in the world don't have. And one of those is our Second Amendment right. I feel very strongly about that, and I went down to my shop prepared for anything. So I did have a couple of firearms with me, and I had done some training, over my years. But I realized, this is not a good situation. Why am I here with this firearm? If I had to use it, could I use it? From a mindset perspective, what would I actually do? What would happen? And it was a real wake up moment for me. And I recognized if I'm going to walk into a situation where I have to protect myself or my family or my business or whatever, I better be damn sure I'm good to do that. And just because you have a Second Amendment right is a protected right by our Constitution. And unfortunately, with that right comes responsibility. And I recognize that I probably hadn't done my due diligence in the responsibility side. So when things calmed down and things died down, what I ended up doing was I started to reach out to folks about doing some more training to get more skilled, and not just in firearms training, but in my medical training, right? And my ability to be prepared for anything that might come along. We'd seen a lot of stuff go on in just a short period of time. Things got weird real fast, and I didn't want to feel weird. I wanted to feel prepared, for kind of anything. What was I going to do if the power went out? If we didn't have any water, if our infrastructure began to shut down. We saw it get real close to that a couple of times, and now we're faced with this different situation. I'm like, this is wild. I need to do better. And so I started training, and I started seeking education from folks that had a lot more experience and a lot more practical experience, but also knowledge about how to prepare for all these different things. And when I got out there, and so take it back to the firearms thing, I was on the range training with some instructors, and I had questions. I saw a lot of gaps in the training that they were doing, just from a instructional design perspective, but also like the practical application of it. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, some of this seems really good. I have questions. I would ask instructors. I didn't necessarily like the answers I was giving. Not that I expected a specific answer back, but I did expect some logic and reasoning behind some of it. And what I found was a lot of, well, this was passed down to me from somebody else, right? And that's just what we do because that's how we've always done it, which is a very common saying in law enforcement training. And what I found it to be was, in some cases, very antiquated and very poor, and in other cases, very, very good. And so, again, I'm telling the story because at that time I was also upstarting the podcast, and the podcast, and it was initially starting with just all health and fitness stuff, but I started to then reach out to folks to have these conversations about this being prepared stuff. And a lot of the folks that were in this genre were also former military or current military or law enforcement, first responders, firefighters, police officers, even dispatchers, things like that had this, that they were problem solvers and they were help givers. And some of these folks I was having these conversations with, they were amazing, and they were totally willing to have this conversation with me because I was asking the right kinds of questions. And I had a hunch. I said, I wonder if other folks might be interested in listening to these conversations. And so I started to publish them. That became part of the podcast. So it was like a second episode a week we were launching, and we called it the After Dark podcast, because it's like during the day we're in the gym, we're doing all the health and fitness stuff, and the After Dark stuff is just kind of these other things that I'm doing in my life. And part of it was sharing my journey and just these conversations. And that's how that got started. And my hunch was right. And now we're just shy of about 400 total episodes, across the board. And a lot of it has to do with law enforcement officers and those that serve or have served, and what they're trying to give back to their current or former communities, and the citizens that are looking for the same types of things I was looking for. And that's really the origin story.
Well, and I've stated he's got a cool, if you're watching the video for this, most people do the audio, but if you're watching the video, he's got like a cool studio. He's got the studio that my studio wants to grow up to be, right? Because that studio would be, yeah. But as I've told you before, I can tell those guys, they don't come in with their guard up, and this is why. You don't have an agenda. There's no agenda. And I don't own guns. I don't. Not because I'm against it. I grew up in South Alabama. I grew up hunting, never shot a deer. Wasn't because I didn't try. But I grew up with a healthy respect of firearms. It was drilled into us that this is not a fishing pole. This can kill you or someone you love. Right.
Yep.
And it could also protect, and it could put a situation where this is where you'd want it to be. So I grew up with a healthy respect. I have so many friends who are gun owners. I do not know one person who is not vigilant and diligent in their approach to firearms. And that's what I love. And I think that's what people, the police and the military and all the people who sit back and talk to you, is because you are asking it from a pragmatic thing. If you are iffy on Second Amendment rights, and most people don't own firearms, I encourage you to listen to this podcast, because are there bad apples in every side? Every side.
Absolutely.
But what you want are the people who take this attitude. What can I do to safely use this? What can I do? And I've learned so much, and it's also helped me understanding what a policeman goes through. What's it like to be in a SWAT unit? What's it like to be on patrol in a Bradley vehicle in a dangerous place? What is it? What is it you're hoping will happen? Or what is it you're hoping will not happen? And that's what I've so enjoyed. I'm such a fan of the podcast. And I've said this before too. One of the things I really like about the way Scott does it is what I really wanted you to have a part of when you listen to this podcast today. His pacing, his ability to speak, and speak where you can understand and know that he's not trying to impress you with all the words he does have. He's trying to communicate with you and with these people, his guests, whether we're talking firearms or whether we're talking, is bench press right for me? How many squats should I be doing? It's still approached from, well, let's see what we're trying to do here.
You brought up a few really good points there. First off, if you're not a fan of your Second Amendment, I get it. I'm not trying to change your mind about anything. But if we can also agree that, listening to what you just said there, that the gun owners that you know are vigilant about making sure from the safety side, which obviously is a large concern there, that's being taken care of, as well as any training that they might be doing, their knowledge of it, where they're being used, those kinds of things. Their firearms are out there for all kinds of reasons. They're not just for shooting human beings, right? I mean, yes, they get used for that. Yeah. And that was not my intent for getting into more training. My intent was to be more confident, more knowledgeable, and be better skilled. And if we just leave it kind of high level like that, it would make sense for me to go out and be asking questions. And to your point, well, I wasn't running into bad actors. I was running into people that were not good at delivering that information. And I had a problem with that. And then at the same time, I was comparing it. This is the thing that really struck me very right away. And that was the firearms training or firearms training industry is nearly identical to the fitness industry in terms of how information gets delivered, how poorly that can be delivered, how things are marketed, how people are trained, again, the camps that people jump into, all of these kinds of things. And so I stepped back. I was able to step back very early on and understand that, look, again, there's no one way to do this. There could be a way of doing it. And I want to find the people that are really good at doing this. And I was just seeking knowledge again, and skills and confidence. And then what I found along the way was how misunderstood or misinterpreted a lot of folks were, and that the message needed to come from somebody that wasn't inside a camp and wasn't planting their flag in any one thing. Now, there are things that I feel very strongly about and have deep convictions on, but those are well developed, and they're not what's right and wrong all the time. There's a lot of gray area in everything. We just talked about that. Like, who are you as an individual? What's your purpose? What is your need? What's your application? How we give you the right answer? And a lot of those questions weren't being answered for me. I was being delivered what the instructor wanted to deliver, and that was it. There was no assessment or why are you here today? A very simple question, And when I was watching other people answer those questions, when they were asked, those answers were very underdeveloped, likely because they didn't really have a strong why. They hadn't really thought about it that much. And so, again, the guests and the folks that we have on, part of it is just about getting a different perspective from folks. And what I recognized is that those that were inside the industry that felt strongly about certain things enjoyed listening to those conversations and getting that perspective, because there wasn't really another way for them to get it, unless you maybe attended a class or had a conversation with somebody about it, with that guest, for that matter. And so it brought people together, and it creates conversation. And I think that's the most important thing that we do, as podcasters, is get people to maybe think a little bit differently, see a different perspective, and be in a position to have a conversation. Have your convictions, have your feelings, right? I think you got to be careful about those, but have your convictions, but let's root this in some logic and some rationale, and let's have a conversation about it, which is something I've never had an issue doing with anybody. I want to have a conversation with you, but let's set some right and left guardrails. What are we trying to get accomplished here, right? And why am I delivering that information? It's so that there's awareness. And on the law enforcement side of things, I think it's very misunderstood. People know me to be very pro law enforcement. They have a very tough job to do. We're asking them as citizens to do a lot of things. They're very undertrained, immensely undertrained. The government will never provide those people the amount of training that they need to have the things that I was seeking, which is the knowledge, the skill, and the aptitude to go out and apply all the skills, all the knowledge, all the things that they need on a daily basis for the things that they have to deal with. And as a citizen, you can very easily bury your head in the sand of, well, that doesn't happen in my backyard, so that's wrong. Well, not understanding what's really going on out there, I think, is a problem with our country. I think people need to be informed, and unfortunately, for law enforcement officers, is a somewhat of a limited or restricted First Amendment right, and because they're being told to do their job and shut up. Right. That's an institutional thing that starts in that culture very, very early on. You haven't been here long enough to have an opinion. You haven't earned a ticket to this ride. Just shut up and do your job. But 15 years down the line, they're still being told that, and they haven't been delivered really great training process. They haven't been given a lot of accountability. And let's be honest, being as pro law enforcement as I am also pro accountability. And they're just like anywhere else. There are bad actors out there, and there are people that are doing a very poor job and need to be doing better. And there's very little accountability to that at a lot of levels, except when something goes really wrong. So if we take it all the way back to, what happened to George Floyd in 2020, again, this might be controversial, but I'll say it. That guy did exactly what he was trained to do. There was video of this. There's a training manual of him doing it. Now, I'm not saying that this was good and anything that happened that day is justified or unjustified. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he did exactly what he was trained to do and done many times before that, and many other officers had done before that. And there was an end result for multiple reasons, and policy changed as a result of that. Now, policy is now put other training practices in place, other policies in place that put law enforcement officers and citizens in danger. That's the reality of that. And on top of that, what it's done is it's now added this layer of personal accountability to an officer for doing what he was trained to do. Again, and this what I'm saying right now is not attached to the George Floyd things. Remove that if you can. If I've already lost you, I'm sorry I had to bring that up, but that's the reality of that situation. Now they're personally accountability. They have personal civil accountability to doing the thing that they were trained to do and going to prison for the rest of their life. They can become criminally liable. I have a problem with that. Right. I have a problem with that as a citizen. I'm a concerned citizen. I want to be, again, I mentioned I want to be a prepared citizen, and I want to understand what I'm looking at when I see it. And I don't think a lot of people want to take that, or want to go to the depths that I've gone to. I get that. And that's why we do the podcast. Like, hopefully this gives you a little bit different perspective and a little bit more insight on what's going on, because these guys are not allowed to talk about it. Right. They can't. And I've had several guests scheduled and lined up who have gotten confirmation that this is okay to come on the show from a higher level leadership, and then somebody else at the brass level or whatever else cut it off. Why? You have a squared away officer here that you have trained, that you have put the stamp on. You've given him a badge and a gun. He's been through all your training. He's out there on the street every day doing his or her job, right, on a daily basis, putting their lives at risk, serving and protecting, doing the things they have to do. And you don't trust them to have a conversation? Why? Optics. And optics are a problem, because it's always self-preservation of the leadership or the agency or the city or the county or whatever. It's always that. And the optics always come first. Like, how's this going to look? Who's this going to make look bad? I have a problem with that. Like, let's talk about it. Like, there's
a problem with it. That's my question.
Let's talk about
it.
it.
Do you not have a problem with it? How do we not have the problem? How can we be so afraid of asking questions that should be asked? And we did. We see the pictures and we just go on that. We go on and you don't factor everything else into it. And that's one of the things I love, is what I said. I have a greater understanding, because even then, when things are going, I'm like, well, that doesn't look good, but everybody else standing around, there's a reason nobody else is reacting. And then when I listen to you and we talked about, well, that was the training. Now we can all sit back and go, maybe the training should be better, or this or that, or maybe let's look into all the factors that this one case had, but we don't want to do that. And we're told, and it was a very bad time. I think the last 7 to 8 years of history is not going to be remembered fondly, because we were told, like you said about the officers, shut your mouth and don't ask questions. Just don't. And that's on both sides. Both sides. That 100%. Should be something that we all should say, no. At this point, get rid of your political labels and say, I live here. This is something we should have a say-so in. We should never be afraid of questions. We should never be afraid of questions.
No, and again, stifling or muting those that are involved personally and professionally on a daily basis of it is, I understand you're representing a larger entity and there could be some liability, but at the same time, how much more liability in that than what they do on a daily basis? Again, given what you have and what you haven't given them, and the accountability that they have to that. So it's not all law enforcement all the time, but it is a lot of that. And the people that are on the show are those that recognize that it's broken. They recognize that it's broken, and they know this because they've lived it and they're doing it every day, and they're coming from all levels of that particular industry, if you want to call it that, and then the ones that support that. So there's a lot of third party instructors that go in and train those folks that we have on the show. Or again, I've had firefighters on the show to talk about the realities that they're dealing with, and they're wanting to have these conversations. These are things that come up, and there's mental health involved in this. There's psychological health. There's financial health that's involved in this. It's not all guns. I don't want to give people the wrong impression here, but we do talk a lot about that, because when we see these officer involved incidents, largely they're revolving around, and when I say that, I mean like on social media, on the news, or whatever else. They're largely involved around an officer involved shooting or some type of use of force, right? And people don't like that. They want the law enforced, and they'll call. They're the first to call when there's a problem, right? That citizen's like, well, I have a problem right now that I can't deal with. I need somebody to fix this problem for me. And this person shows up and they fix the problem. Oh, I wanted you to come fix it, but not like that. I didn't want you to do that. Okay, well, exactly what did you want them to do? You don't have a strong understanding of what needs to get done in order for things to happen. And we're talking about having conversations. Verbal jiu-jitsu, or having a conversation in the term de-escalate. De-escalate means a lot of different things. There is a continuum of how to go through that. And at some point, words might not work. So what happens after that? Now, the bigger problem with when the words don't work and it gets into some type of use of force is what you see is the media gets an opportunity to run with whatever narrative they want to run with on. And the officer is told to shut up. You are not. They're put on desk duty. They're told not to. They can't even communicate with the officers if there's an the other officers. They're left on an island by themselves. They can't say anything, but they still have access to social media. They see all the lies being told and all the stuff that's running amok. They're not able to do anything. And it's like a year and a half later when the truth comes out about that incident or a review comes out. It's just not a good communication process. I think law enforcement needs to do a better job. They need to come. I think counties, cities, they need to do a better job. I won't talk about what the media should feel in terms of responsibility to this, because I don't think they feel any. Because if it gets clicks, it gets likes or whatever, then they're doing their job. They're fulfilling their thing. But sorry, I don't want to run off on a tangent here, but that's where my passion comes from in just learning. And the more I've learned, I think the more the deeper I can dig into asking particular questions and certain things, and understanding the law, understanding policy, understanding procedure, understanding the training that they do and they don't get. And it's been a really cool journey to learn and be able to contribute to making it better in some way. I get that feedback quite frequently, like, hey, you are helping. I was able to take this to my team sergeant, my captain, my lieutenant, my chief, and we're actually implementing some of the things I heard your guest talk about, who works for department, whatever, on the right coast of the country versus what we do here on the left coast of the country. So it's been an interesting ride, and I hope it helps people. I think it is at some level, but that's really kind of the underlying things you'll find on the Iron Sights podcast. If you're not just listening, maybe you come for the fitness, maybe you come for the firearms. There's something there for everybody.
I am that guy. I came for the fitness and I stayed for the conversation. And that's what you'll find links on this podcast to PD, Red Dot Fitness. You'll find it to the Iron Sights podcast, and you'll understand why I don't have a lot of time to listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't. When you're recording podcasts, you don't have a lot of time to listen to a lot. But I make time for yours, because especially now I've got to know you, but I was listening to it way before I knew you. So I hope everybody will take a chance, and we're hopefully this won't be the last time we do this.
Well, I appreciate that. First off, thank you for the compliments, and thank you for the encouragement. I appreciate that. From one podcaster to another, I know the challenges of trying to understand, like, does this stuff really even reach people? And unless you have these conversations, you don't really know. So I appreciate that. Thank you for plugging the show. I think in today's day and age, with as many podcasts that are out there, there's a lot for people to choose from. But that's also the great part about it. It allows you to have conversations that be a fly on the wall if you're in the audience, to maybe pick something up new or drive you in a different direction to explore something new. And your podcast does the same, man, and it's given me a lot of perspective from a lot of different people from all kinds of things. And that's what I love. I love studying people. I'm a nerd or a geek that way. We do that in the gym all day, like from the health and fitness side of things. This is just podcasts are an interesting way to actually hear long form conversations about things that may or may not be important to you when you first turn it on, but by the time you're done, maybe you then have a similar conversation with somebody in your community and your family, and it brings you closer, and you learn a few things about that person. And that's the beauty. It's also probably the blessing and the curse of podcasts, because sometimes maybe I piss some people off today. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
It doesn't bother me. Like I said, if you're afraid of what he was talking about, then that's a you problem. That's just me talking. That's me. And if that ticks you off, then that's probably a you problem too.
I agree.
Scott, you're the best, my friend. Thank you. And let's do this again.
Oh yeah, man. I'd love to. Thank you for having me on. Like I said, and I'm often overdo this, but I appreciate you, man. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for anytime anybody wants to spend time with me in any format or whatever, and they give me the energy and the feedback, and good, bad, or indifferent. I always appreciate it. So thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate you.